Are you ready, Rebecca?
Yep, just started the recording.
Okay, you have everything?
Yep.
City of Anamosa, City Council Agenda Regular Session, Monday, April 27th, 2020, 6 p.m. 1.0 roll call.
Crump,
Here.
Smith,
Here.
Lockhart,
Here.
Zumba,
Here.
Stout,
Here.
Capron,
Here.
2.0 Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll now allow Rebecca to make a brief statement.
Hello, everybody. I am just gonna, for those who are new and for those who just need a reminder, gonna let you know how to raise your hand, because the way we're doing this is that you just raise your hand within the Zoom meeting, and then when it comes time on any item for public comment, I will let you know that I've unmuted you and you can go ahead and ask your question. The way to find the raise your hand option, especially if you're on a desktop computer, is to hover over where the video is. You should see something that says participants. Click on participants, and then you should see on the right a full list of participants, and there should be an option right below that that says raise your hand. And if you just tap on that at any point when you think, oh, I would like to make a statement, I will let you know when that time rolls around. If you are calling in on your phone, which I don't see anybody, but just in case, you can just type in on the keypad *9, and that will raise your hand in the meeting. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Rebecca. Beth, as in the past, we will roll vote all motion. 3.0 agenda approval.
So moved.
Second.
Motion to approve the agenda is submitted by Kay, second by Alan. Any further council discussion?
Capron,
Yes.
Stout,
Yes.
Zumba,
Yes.
Lockhart,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Crump,
Yes.
Motion to approve the agenda was unanimous. 4.0 motion to approve the minutes from the following meetings. 4.1 April 13, 2020 regular council meeting.
Move to approve.
Second.
I did not catch who made the initial motion.
I did. Rich?
Motion by Rich, second by Galen. Is there any further discussion regarding the minutes as submitted for the council?
okay. Stout,
Yes.
Zumba,
Yes.
Lockhart,
Yes.
Capron,
Yes.
Crump,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Motion to approve the minutes from April 13th was unanimous. 5.0 public hearings, none. 6.0 proclamations, none. 7.0 old business. 7.1 resolution adopting purchasing policy.
Following our discussion at our last meeting, I made some modifications to the policy. Those changes are highlighted in yellow within your packet. First was within section 2, adding a item to the list for customer service. Second change was in section 3, adding subsection 9 regarding government bids. Third change was altering section 7 on purchasing authority so that fixed assets of $2,500 or more, or above $2,500, would require approval by the council prior to the purchase, unless it's an emergency item that gets approval from the mayor or city administrator. That did leave, I decided to separate out other items that didn't meet that definition and left the originally introduced amounts for that. Modified the section 8 by local policy to remove commercial from definitions A and B and created definition C, which is essentially that if there is a business type that there is no local business meeting, definition A or B, that this broader definition, including any business with a Anamosa address, could then meet, be eligible for the benefit of this policy. And lastly, added a section 10 regarding the purchasing of used equipment. That was, I believe, covered all of the comments that we discussed, but I'm open to any questions or comments.
Under certification on section 8, I think we touched on it a little bit, but I forget what we had discussed. But so to be considered, the business has to be certified, no matter what type of equipment or purchase we're talking about.
As it's currently written, yes. And I think that I understand that it may be a little bit more work on the part of the business, and I don't want to make it cumbersome or difficult to be eligible under this, but at the same time, I don't want it to be our responsibility to locate these businesses and make sure, that, especially since we're not requiring it to be commercial properties. If it's a home-based business, we may not know they're in operation for certain things. And so for us to make sure that we're aware we're not missing somebody, I think it's fair to require them to certify.
Like, just I question, I guess. So like the way out there, obvious example, Wayne Hall, we look at buying a vehicle from them. Are they currently certified, or are we just, it's obvious they're the only dealership in town, so we give them a shot? Like on a vehicle purchase, how is that currently?
We don't have any preference for local businesses right now, so there's no certification process existing. This would be new. We'd have a new form.
Okay.
And I mean, we, I guess, typically try to encourage people to shop local, but it's not in policy. Our departments normally contact Wayne Hall, but not always, because they have kind of over time learned, at least in car sales, that we haven't received competitive bids recently. Yeah. Hopefully this might help. I don't know if it would be within the percentage set in this policy, but I guess seeing that most vehicles are going to be between 25,000 and 199,000,
yeah,
he'd have to be within 5% of our lowest bid to get the preference.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So the above requirements are just to complete and submit a local business certificate? Is that all to be?
I've got one other question too. On the certification, suppose that we find a business that we want to use and we talk to them, but they're not certified, then we could certify them if we decide we want, when we talk to them.
Correct. So if this is
Make it
passed,
easy on
we
them.
will advertise this new policy and let businesses know that if they're interested, that they can submit now. But as Alan pointed out, if we're in the middle of a transaction and we think, oh, hey, here's a local business, say Wayne Hall, for example, that isn't certified, we can at that time inform them, go
Yeah.
ahead and certify now.
And-
So
and
go ahead.
I'm going to assume that in order for them to certify, it's just going to be what? Half a page type questionnaire? What
Yeah.
type of
What
form
are the
will you?
requirements?
I think it'll be no more than one page and probably like a half page. And basically, we're just needing the information to certify that they do operate in town and that their, I guess, taxes are current based on the definitions above.
So it's really not going to be a very painful deal for them, and it's actually to their benefit. So I'm
Yes.
good with that.
That makes sense. We'd have their phone number on there too, so that's something we could,
Yeah.
yeah.
And again, they would not have to reapply every year. Once they're certified, they're certified unless we feel that they're no longer eligible when we review it. We'll review the list annually, but they wouldn't have to recertify.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve it.
I'll second that.
Second.
With a motion to approve the or to approve the purchasing policy as submitted by Rich, it was seconded by Alan. Any further discussion from the council? I do just want to, I guess, inform the council that in the initial discussion of this 2 weeks ago at our meeting, there were times within the discussion we were having that I found it to be very confusing, or I should say rather confusing, the direction and the route that the council was looking to go. So just as a reminder that, this policy remain fluid in the sense that if we have to review and tweak it and revise it, that, we take a look at it periodically, if nothing else, to make sure it's still fitting the needs and the direction that you initially wanted to go.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and I think I said the last meeting, Rod, that we ought to take a look at this in December, see what was working right, what needs to be tweaked, and that it was a fluid document. So we did have that discussion 2 weeks ago.
If we could somehow in notations that we get this back, possibly as an agenda item at the end of the year.
That would be good. Yep.
Uh,
Well, then we would know the community's response too from our business people, which would be
Would we
very
want to
helpful.
do it a little sooner the first time?
Again, we can do it whenever. I just don't want to lose sight of the
Yeah,
fact that we
absolutely,
do
yeah.
want to take another look at it. So
Well, I would just as soon wait until December. That way it's 6 months into the new fiscal year.
good point, Rich. You get some history, some data there
Yep.
with it.
Yeah.
If there's no other discussion, Beth, we'll do a roll vote.
Mockart,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Crump,
Yes.
Stout,
Yes.
Zumba,
Yes.
Capron,
Yes.
We've now approved it. It was unanimous. Rebecca, was there anybody from the public that was looking to add some input?
There was not. I would have jumped in if there was.
Thank you.
Yep.
We appreciate your interruptions.
I endeavored.
8.0, new business. 8.1, discussion of possible action on employee benefits renewal.
I apologize if this line item was confusing at all, but this is referring strictly to health insurance, vision, dental insurance, and life insurance policies that the city carries for employees. And I think the majority of our discussion will revolve around the health insurance renewal. I believe Brian Doyle from Acumen is on the call. Rebecca, do you see him?
I do. I can unmute him real quick.
Great.
Perfect. Thank you, Rebecca.
Brian, do you want to give us, probably start with a rundown of the vision and dental and life first, and then we'll get into the health, which is, I think, the majority of our discussion.
Sure, I can absolutely do that. So the dental and vision policies that have been in place for a while now will not change as far as how the coverage works or anything along those lines. Both carriers, Delta and VSP, are kind of considered the Cadillac as far as carriers go in those two markets. Can everybody hear me okay? I guess I should probably ask that.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Both of those specific benefits had a very small increase by less than $1 per individual. Delta has come out with a strategy due to a reaction to COVID-19 that they are not passing along any increases on their plans that renew in June, July, and August. So what was going to be a small increase on the dental actually now is going to be flat, so there's no increase there at all. Vision, again, is just a small increase compared to what it was before. Life insurance, we made a change to the carrier that we are using for life insurance last year, and that rate is not changing. It was locked in for 3 years, so we have a couple more years on a flat rate there. One thing that I don't think was provided or that is put in front of you is the question was asked at this year's renewal if we want to offer a voluntary life insurance plan. So if members wanted to purchase their own coverage up and beyond what the city pays for, do we want to do that? So I reached out and got a quote on what that would look like. There's a couple of barriers that we would have to overcome if we want to offer a voluntary life insurance plan. The good news about that plan is it would be a $100,000 guarantee issue. So if somebody is unable to get coverage on their own at the open enrollment or the initial offering when they're hired or the first time we roll it out, they would be able to purchase up to $100,000 without answering any health questions. If they wanted to go beyond 100,000, they could do so up to 350, which would be the cap, but they would have to answer or some health questions to get beyond that 100,000. Every year after that initial open enrollment period, they could increase their coverage by $10,000 if they would like to. Again, beyond that 100,000 that they would initially purchase. The bad news about the voluntary life insurance plan on a group chassis, which would be tied to the city, is that you would need 10 employees to enroll to be able to offer the benefit. They have participation standards. So that's kind of the big catch-22 is if we would get 10 people or not, based off of the full number eligible. So the question is, do we want to talk about or offer that coverage, or would we rather just pass on that for the time being and offer it at a future time if we thought we were going to have more participation?
So I plan to poll the staff and see who's interested. I mean, it doesn't make sense to pursue it if we don't have 10 people, but there's really no cost to the city in providing it. Maybe a little bit of administrative work, but nothing substantial. I don't see a reason to offer it if we have enough participants, but just wanted to bring it to your attention.
Correct.
Thanks.
The other thing I'd like to add real quick is it would be a portable benefit. So if somebody left or retired, they would be able to take that benefit with them if they wanted.
If
Any
there's
questions?
no questions on those three, we can get into the health insurance.
Sounds good. Thank you, Jacob. From what I understand, there was a couple documents put in front of everybody. Is that correct? For the health insurance?
Yes.
Okay. So there's 4 pages that we'll scan through, and I tried to make this simple and then as clear cut as you can. The first page on the top, it says 2019 current medical plan options. So there's 2 health insurance plans that employees have the choice to enroll in. The first one is called Alliance Select Primary. The second is called Blue Advantage. The biggest difference in those 2 plans is the network. At the top right under the name, you'll see PPO and HMO. The PPO network that most of the employees are enrolled in really is nationwide coverage. It ties you into the Blue Cross Blue Shield market, whether you're in Anamosa, Cedar Rapids, Florida, Denver, Colorado, anywhere you see the Blue Cross Blue Shield logo, you would be operating on an in-network benefit. The HMO, so the second plan, the network, HMO stands for Health Maintenance Organization, that is a little bit more relegated to the state of Iowa and the contiguous counties surrounding the state of Iowa. So as you can see below, the pricing is a little bit better for the HMO, but what you're giving up there is elective care outside of the network. When I said elective care, what I mean by that is if you are on vacation in Florida and you're outside of the network and you're in an emergency situation, that would still operate as an in-network benefit. But if you're electing to have your surgery, for example, at Mayo up in Rochester, as opposed to an in-network provider in Cedar Rapids or Iowa City or Anamosa, that would not be a covered benefit if you're electing to go outside. So we've given employees the choice to enroll in the plan that suits them best for the last few years. The guts of the plan is basically the same: what's covered, what's not covered, things of that nature. The difference is the network and then the cost share. So when I say cost share, I'm talking about the deductible, the out-of-pocket maximum, and then the office visit co-pays. So you'll notice on the PPO plan, it's a slightly higher deductible and the out-of-pocket maximum is the same. Then the HMO is a slightly lower deductible. And then the PPO nationwide network plan also has what we call a split copay for office visits. When I say split copay, I mean $25 for a regular primary care physician, $50 if you're going to a non-primary care, which most people think of as a specialist. If you hear an IST at the end of the name of the doctor, it's going to be a little bit higher copay, whereas the HMO has just a flat copay if you're going in for an office visit. So to renew with the exact same plans we had last year, Wellmark passed on an increase. If you look at the second page, that shows you no changes with the health plan at all to what employees are receiving. But the annual increase for those same plans was just over 5% for both plan options. So when we're going through the renewal process, we like looking at what is available to us to purchase outside of just flat fully insured, whatever Wellmark's going to provide. So the third page just shows a different funding mechanism with the attempt to provide the same level of benefit to employees. Okay. So again, difference between first and second page is renewing with the same plans. The third page is what we call partial self-funding. So the concept with partial self-funding is, what if we bought a higher deductible, a cheaper plan from Wellmark, took a little risk as the city to fund that same plan down to the same deductible and out-of-pocket maximum levels for employees? Would that be beneficial to us? And that's what this page represents, is what the expected plan cost would be if we took a little risk on the city. So you'll notice the deductibles and the out-of-pocket maximums are the same as the first 2 pages. We're funding that down to the exact same for the employee. The co-pays are slightly higher because if we're buying a higher deductible plan from Wellmark, they slowly ratchet up the office visit co-pays. You'll notice the premium down below, that is down quite a bit from the first 2 pages because we're buying a higher deductible health plan. But then you'll also notice in the lines where it says claims administration, both of those numbers go up from the previous levels because they're on the plan that you're on today, or if we renewed with the exact same plan, there is no extra claims or administration that you would pay as a city because there's no risk. We push all of that risk over to Wellmark. On this plan, we accept a little risk. These numbers are what we would consider conservative. If you have a lot of claims, we would pay a third-party administrator to do that extra mechanism of funding the level down. And then the claims estimate are based off of your group for the last few years, what we would expect you to pay in claims on a conservative estimate. So I believe there was another attachment handed out, Jacob, is that correct? That kind of walks through that claims flow?
Yeah, both claims flow documents are included.
Okay, so if we jump over to that document, on the top left, it says City of Anamosa PSF Plan In-Network Claims Flow Analysis. So how this would work, if you see on the, kind of in the middle of the page on the left, it says we're buying the deductible of $5,000 with an out-of-pocket maximum OPM of $6,350. This chart shows who pays when, really. So we're going to fund it down. We're going to buy the $5,000, $6,350, fund it down to provide the same that employees are having today on that PPO plan. So the first $1,500 of expenses that work towards your deductible is still on the employee. That next $3,500 is split between the employee or participant and the sponsor, which would be the city. The next $1,500, there's actually three payers. So the employee, the city, as well as Wellmark is the carrier. And then once an individual accumulates $8,375 towards their deductible, Wellmark takes the rest of the risk. So they pay everything beyond that. So this is a strategy that our office has worked with a lot of employers on, specific to your size, based off of how Wellmark charges for their plans. It's not a strategy that we would want to implement if it didn't save us any money, because it adds a little bit of confusion with a third-party payer into the system. But as you can see on the third page of the first document we were looking at, where we're projecting cost, the cost projection is a lot lower than what the renewal offer is. So it's not something you have to do. But it's something that we talked about in the renewal meeting, and Jacob's suggestion was that we talked about it as a council.
Is there any data that we have for the city that we could plug into this plan and know where we're at? Say, like, where would we have been last year or with this?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there is some data, but it's not as ideally, I would have data to show exactly how many people hit their out-of-pocket maximum from year to year. Wellmark doesn't give us that information unless you have 50 individuals enrolled. So 50 employees. I'm not talking about families. I'm just talking about specific employees. So they don't give us as much data, being that you don't have 50 enrolled. But that being said, it's very clear that the last 5 years you would not have approached my projection where it says the claims. If you're looking at 32,800 plus 5,900, over the last 5 years, those two numbers are very conservative compared to what we would expect for your group. So again, talking about positives, negatives of the partial self-funded arrangement, the biggest positive is there should be cost savings. The biggest negative, I would say, would be, well, they're kind of twofold. One, right now, every dollar you pay towards a health plan is fixed. So the bill is the exact same every month. On the partial self-funded plan, what you pay Wellmark is going to go down. but the claims that come in and the administration is going to fluctuate slightly from month to month. And usually that's a little bit front heavy, meaning people that are going to have really big bills, really big surgeries, things of that nature. Most of the time we see those in the front half of the year. And then the claims that you end up paying tails off towards the end of the year. And then for the employees, if we enroll this strategy, we want to be very conscious of two things. One, the office visit copays go up slightly for them. And two, we want to educate them on how the system works, adding a third player or a third payer into the health plan.
So this kind of boils down to weighing the risk against the amount we're going to save, whether it's worth taking our risk or not.
That's absolutely correct. So this concept has been something I've talked about with your group for probably 4 or 5 years. If we do this concept, then we will get the specific data to show us whether it was a good move or not, because we'll be able to compare what you would have paid compared to what you will pay on the new plan, and we'll track the claims as they come in. If we don't do this option or we decide against it, I'll still be able to every year project what we think your cost would be, and that's going to be fairly accurate because I can see what Wellmark charges. Not Wellmark charges, what providers charge, the hospitals. The hard thing about looking at incurred charges from the hospitals is Wellmark does not pay those incurred charges. Out of that incurred charge, your members are paying copays, office visits, deductibles, and then Wellmark's applying their large discount. So in reality, when Wellmark is showing that an incurred charge of say $10,000, they may pay only half of that, like $5,000. So whatever I can pull right now or the information I can look at is off of incurred charges.
So looking at the dollar savings, as Alan was kind of pointing out, do the benefits outweigh the risks? I would propose that they do. If we renewed with no change, we're looking at slightly over 5% increase, or a premium of $394,000. With these conservative estimates, we're looking at a 7% decrease in premiums, or $349,000. That's accounting for roughly $39,000 in claims that the city would cover. That still gives us like another $50,000 before we even broke even. Obviously, we hope to do better than breaking even, but I think the probability is in our favor to save money and make it worth the hassle in this situation.
Have the employees been informed of possible choices that they have?
I've discussed it with the department heads. I have not discussed this with all employees. Aside from the copays, there really is no change on their end other than how they pay. They'll have to wait for a second and EOB. But
yeah, Jacob, let me jump in there because that's a very good point. As far as what the employees see for a change, they don't have to actually turn anything in. They don't have to physically track their expenses. When we set this up, that third-party payer ties into Wellmark system. So when somebody goes to the doctor, they get something in the mail called an EOB, an explanation of benefits.
Mhm.
The same time the employee gets that, the third-party administrator gets that as well. And then the third-party administrator sends another one out to show the difference between what the city is paying and what the Wellmark plan is. So they don't have to turn anything in. It automatically gets done behind the scenes. But from an education standpoint, we need to let the employee know that there's going to be about a week to 10 days between when they receive the letter in the mail from Wellmark compared to when the third party is going to send their letter.
Thank you.
We did have a question from a member of the public, if you're willing to take those at this time.
Sure.
So Angela Weinkoff, 501 North Division Street, has asked, I would like to know what effort was put forth to accept proposals from other companies in order to assure this is the best fiscal decision for the city while maintaining quality employee benefits.
Every year we look at different carriers in the marketplace that we can shop for health insurance coverage. Unfortunately, in the state of Iowa, there's not a ton of carriers for us to choose from. The main two carriers in the state of Iowa are Wellmark and United Healthcare. Outside of those two operate probably 98% of the business that is done on a group chassis, I guess, in the state of Iowa. Outside of those two carriers, there are a handful of smaller groups. Unfortunately, with the claims that come through or have come through over the last 5 years with the city that's specific to the city, those carriers were not entertaining a bid. So we were kind of stuck with Wellmark and United Healthcare. And at this point, Wellmark was the most attractive bid.
And I would add to that, we typically, try to look at different carriers or plans every year when we renew, but this year we also looked at different brokers beyond Acumen, which we've had a long-standing relationship with. Both the deputy city clerk and myself met with a couple other brokers, and I think there is good options out there, but we felt at this time it was in our best interest to stay with Acumen, and that's where we're at.
All right, let me just
Well,
check with Angela to make
if
sure
I'm
she doesn't
hearing
have
you,
more
Jacob,
questions.
You did, in a sense, you did shop around outside of who we had currently been with, Acumen,
Correct.
for insurers, policies that would be available. So take us into more detail of what the reasoning was that you opted not to go that route.
We didn't feel that there was really much substantial difference in what the other brokers could provide. There are some different things that various firms, more than even we talked to, that they will offer market kind of these accessory benefits to their broker services, legal advice, things like that, that again are really, in my opinion, focused on the marketing, getting a new client on board and not necessarily adding a whole lot of value. And that may not always be the case. And Acumen does offer some of similar services. But I guess at the end of the day, none of those things seemed worth making the change. I guess I wouldn't have even thought much to, well, it's good to always reevaluate your business relationships. I wouldn't have given a whole lot of thought to it. We had a couple hiccups on our life insurance policy a few months back, but we were going through a bunch of transition at that time. No blame being pointed anywhere, but I think it was just as much on our organization as Acumen's organization why that hiccup occurred. So I felt that at least we should prolong our relationship for another year. We've got some new staff, and if we want to look at things again next year, that's fine. But overall, I think we've been served well by Acumen. They've provided us some good options, at least in my experience. This would be our third renewal, since I've been here, and every renewal we have found ways to save money. Our premiums have not increased based on the policy since I've been here. If they may increase if we have added employees of different ages or different plan types, but not due to the premium itself.
So
Jacob,
just a second, Rebecca. So the other healthcare providers that you took a look at, I guess two things that I would like some information on. Costing, were they more or less? And coverage, was it more or less? Because that would be two face value driving factors to either switch or stay the course.
So I don't have off the top of my head, or I could try to look it up, but I fear it might take a little while. I had requested from both Acumen and the other firms how their compensation works. I mean, they get paid as a commission off of the sale to the actual carrier for each policy. Again, off the top of my head, I don't know those numbers. I cannot say that Acumen was the lowest, but they were all very similar in the way that they handled that. Brian, if I recall, why don't you just go ahead and run us through how your commission works for the city?
Sure. And I'll also kind of give you a little background on how that affects the plan itself. Because I just want to make one kind of clear point is that Wellmark is separate from Acumen. So we're an independent broker. We care because we want the policies to be good, but we don't try to influence one way, shape, or form to a specific carrier. And the pricing that is tied to your specific health plan and the deductible levels and all that kind of stuff is set by Wellmark. Wellmark designs the plans and then they pass the renewal on. We work with the city on what that renewal looks like and what our other alternative options are going to be. So I don't have the ability to drive the cost. I just drive the options and kind of navigate what our potential offers are going to be. So that being said, any broker that uses Wellmark, for example, is going to have the exact same pricing as long as they have the same claim history and set of individuals that are enrolled in the plans. How Acumen's specific compensation works is it's separated per policy, like Jacob said. So for instance, the life insurance, it's a percentage of the overall premium. Dental and vision also are a percentage of the overall premium. Life insurance, I believe, is 10%. Dental and vision are 6%. And then health is not a percentage of the premium because we don't want to incentivize higher premiums. Health it's tied to enrollment. So it's a per member per month charge. So for instance, currently the city has roughly 30 individuals enrolled in the plan. It's a flat dollar amount per individual that's enrolled in the plan.
Well, unless I missed some, not real clear. What criteria? What did you use to rule out a new provider? Was cost, or were they all compatible in cost, but coverage was more or less, or they were all compatible across the board?
So
that led us to stay the course with our current provider.
It's the relationship, I think, because I think cost was really comparable. There was no substantial difference, if there was any difference at all. And again, they all have access to essentially the same plans, and those plans cost the same from Wellmark. For me, it was just the relationship and what and I explained that to the firms that I haven't worked with before that were looking for our business. It's trying to ask them to explain how it would look like, you know, a year from now working with them and getting a feel for that, what that relationship would be like, what our, you know, frequency of our communication, and what I can expect from them in terms of reporting and information when it comes to renewals, what data will I be able to look at. And when it came down to it, I think all those things considered, and especially with the long-standing relationship with Acumen, that tipped the scale. So.
Angela had a few more questions. Do you have a moment to take her other questions? I've opened her mic if you are.
I'd like to see if there's any further
Okay.
council discussion before we allow additional public input. Does the council have any additional questions for either Jacob or Brian regarding the various policies that we reviewed?
If the city takes on the some of the expense or potential expense, I'd asked that earlier about the savings that we had to weigh that. How much per year are we going to save on the policy we would be getting now compared to whether if we took on some of the insurance responsibility? Is there a figure that I can hold in my hand?
Based on the two, so looking at the second and third pages of the Acumen documents, the first being the straight renewal with no change, and the third being the partially self-funded plan. There's a box towards the bottom that refers to the annual grand total. And the straight renewal is $394,000. The partially self-funded is $349,000. And again, that's an estimate because we don't know exactly what those claims would come at, but it's a conservative estimate. Based on those two figures, it's about $45,000 in savings, if I'm doing my math right. Yes.
$45,000 a year.
So we're looking
Yes.
at 12%.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
With the groups that we've implemented this strategy with, I would say our average savings on an annual basis is between 10 and 15%. So the numbers that I'm projecting here fall within that range. In my experience, and this is 9 years, when we've gone with the partial self-funded route, we have had a couple groups that were almost a wash, but we've also had a few groups that really didn't pay any claims at all in the calendar year. So as Jacob has said a couple times, I think the 7% annual grand total decrease is a conservative estimate. And something to take into consideration, which it's kind of hard to apply a specific number to, but when Wellmark passes on an increase, they pass it on in multiple areas. One is the base increase, which means that is based off of all of the groups of your size. So between 50 and 100 employees, based off of the performance of those groups. Specific to COVID-19, they have made the decision to waive all cost share for COVID-19 related testing and service or claims. The short-term effect of that is great because those that are going through that sickness means that they don't have anything to pay in the short term. The long term, if those expenses get added back into plans, it's in that base rate that's spread across all employers. So if there's going to be a percentage that's added into a renewal, it's going to be on that base rate. So if you are buying a higher deductible plan, the cost that's passed along to you is less. If that makes sense.
So if I understand this, we're going to save approximately $45,000 a year. Worst case scenario, and we had something catastrophic happen, we would end up spending that 45,000, but we wouldn't go past that. The insurance company picks it up after that. I'm not a gambler, so I'm just wanting to make sure that once we blow that 45 that we saved, we aren't back in the front room having to dole out more money.
Yeah, no, I think that's a safe estimate. The reason I don't want to say it's going to be 45,000 every year is because I like to deal in percentages when we're talking about savings more, because if you get let's say it's a 5 or 10% increase next year, your savings won't be 45,000. It'll be a percentage of what the total spend is going to be. So more of that 10 to 15% annually is what you recognize in savings with the partial self-funded arrangement.
I think the question I'm trying to ask is that we go with this plan, let's say, and we save $45,000. The next year we still go with this plan. Let's say we're saving $42,000 because of some cost raises or something. So we have a responsibility to pay a certain amount. So if we spend that $42,000 we save 2 years from now, is that where our responsibility stops? Because that's the amount we were saving, and that was the amount that we were required to spend? Or if things get worse, are we still locked into this? You're going to have to pay it more?
Now, every year when your renewal comes up, which is July 1st, we have the option to pivot to any different type of plan. So if we want to eliminate the partial self-funding arrangement and go back to fully insured, we can absolutely do that.
No, I don't think you quite understand my question. I'll try to explain it differently. We take this self-funding plan, and like Jacob said, we're going to be saving $45,000 this year approximately, that judging from what the figures are. That means that we're self-funding, and that's part of our responsibility. But what happens if our self-funding spends that 45 that we saved? Is that the only amount we're responsible for? And then does the insurance company come back, or we have something catastrophic and now we spent the 45, and since we're self-funding, we're still spending quite a bit of money because we've chosen that plan, and we end up spending $200,000. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do.
I'm not so much worried about the amount of money we're going to save. I'm worried about how much money we may end up spending on the other end of that stick.
Sure. So another way to kind of rephrase that. So if we go back to the document that says the partial self-funded plan in-network claims flow analysis. So what you're buying has an out-of-pocket maximum of $6,350, and you're funding that down to $3,000. So another way to think about that would be the maximum risk that the city would have if every single employee, spouse, child would have a big bill. You would be taking on $3,350 in risk per person, or per belly button, if you will. So if every single person would have a large hospital bill, a large bill that would go towards the deductible, the city would not save money. They would absolutely lose money. I don't have the exact figure. Give me just 1 second and I'll see how many belly buttons are enrolled in the plan right now. There's roughly 55 belly buttons on the plan right now. So worst case scenario would be those claims, which we have conservatively estimated at just under 40,000, would be 180,000. That being said, if every single person that's on the plan maxes out the potential risk for the city, the next renewal is going to be a very big issue. That I guess that's just not something that you see, is that many people having a very large claim.
As far as our history, going back 5 years, I think somebody said we would have done okay considering if we'd have gone on this plan.
That's
Yes.
what Brian had said.
So
Yes.
if we 1 year out of 10 had something like that, we would still save money in the long run.
Correct.
Kind of
Correct.
just looking into the future.
Correct. The claims line that I have here, where it's roughly 40,000 between the two plans, in the last 5 years, you would not have approached that number. Not any of those 5 years.
Any other questions for Jacob or Brian from the council?
Well, I do have a question for Jacob. So if we do this, then how do we budget for it?
I would probably leave our budget alone for now because we budgeted for an increase, so we have enough money there. We'll get invoices for the claims we're responsible for, and we'll pay them, and I guess see how we do. Hopefully, we'll come in well below what we've budgeted for health insurance expenses. Does that answer your question, or can I?
Well,
add more to it?
pretty much. I just didn't know, would we or should we maybe schedule a separate line item for our portion of coverages and have it as a flat amount as opposed to having premiums and everything in one pool? And then how do we, just make sure we're following that?
We probably should have at least a separate line item for the expense of our claims so we can track that easily. We talked about whether we need a separate fund to pay out of, and I don't think that would be necessary from what I understand. We can just pay out of our regular general fund.
So you're looking for
Okay.
in a sense, a line item of our the city's out of pocket for claims, separate from what the city's portion of the premiums would be.
Yeah.
Is that what I'm hearing?
I would probably add that line item, but it wouldn't change the overall dollar amount we're spending on health insurance. Yeah.
Would we roll that over for the next year and then add into it and just build our claim reserve?
I think it's something
No.
to take a look at the
No.
end of it.
Wouldn't have to do that.
Right now,
See how
it would
those
just roll
stacks up.
back into the general fund like
Okay.
everything
Right.
else does.
Rich, is that a little clear what you were inquiring?
That is kind of what I was thinking would happen.
And that's a good point to see that separation there, Rich, so you can, you have the traceability from
Yep.
surface level.
Well, it's easy to account for this way. So when we do go and look at it, we can say, we know what we spent last year, what we maybe need to allocate for the next year. So I think separating them out, which is what I thought we would do, makes a lot of sense.
Agree.
Yeah.
Back to Angela.
Yeah, if there's no other questions from the council, Rebecca, can you let us know what Angela's questions are?
I'm going to go ahead and unmute her so that she can ask her questions. Well, I'm going to try to unmute her at least. There we go. Angela, you should be able to speak.
Okay, Angela Weinkoff, 501 North Division Street. I guess I'm coming to this as a residential and commercial property owner in the city of Anamosa. I've been attending city council meetings now for almost a year. I'm well aware of the fiscal trouble we're in. We have more fiscal problems coming up. We need a new well, we need a new police station. One of the things that I thought that I could bring to the table is a proposal for maybe saving money on employee benefits. I also own Wapsie Insurance. In February, my broker contacted Jacob, and as far as today, no numbers were ever exchanged. So if Jacob did get bids from other brokers, I'd like to know who and if he actually got numbers from any of them or just made the decision to not proceed.
I was put in contact with a firm that I thought was associated with your firm, True North
Yes.
Partners, and I met with them. They provided a proposal, as well as other broker by the name of Holmes Murphy, and again, not just myself, but the deputy city clerk. We met with both of them, discussed various details, including their costs, which I think are really negligible. They're comparable. And we made the decision based on our relationship with Acumen to stay with Acumen, which I would like to reiterate that we've saved money on premiums every year since I've been here.
Angela, is that answering the question that you had?
It kind of goes against the information I received today from my broker because he told me no numbers were ever discussed. The conversation was held between Jacob and Ginger, I believe, but that no numbers had ever been discussed. So I guess I just want to make sure that the city is doing its due diligence for the taxpayers, for all of you sitting around the table, so that we can proceed confidently.
If they mean no numbers were discussed, we did not get into the details of discussing specific plans. That didn't seem appropriate. Again, they all have access to the same types of plans. They may have different recommendations, so I suppose they could have proposed a different plan than what Acumen proposed and we discussed. That's a possibility. Those types of numbers were not discussed, but like I said, we focused on the relationship and how that would work because my experience is that there would not have been a substantial difference in cost.
Well, I would recommend then, at least if we don't do it this year, next year we do get numbers from all parties involved just to compare and be able to verify that they are similar.
Jacob, do you mind if I jump in and ask, did you ask compensation numbers from True North and Holmes Murphy?
I asked them for how their commission would work, similar to how I asked Acumen how their commission works. I don't know that I have that information at my fingertips, but I asked that information from all the brokers we talked with, and I just didn't discuss the plans themselves, which, again, there are a lot of plans available through Wellmark or other carriers, but there is some finite, number of plans.
Right, and with Wellmark specifically, just to give a little background, they don't give a full insurance quote to multiple brokers. The agency or the customer, the client, picks who they want to work with. Now, you can get the full quote, so all of Wellmark's numbers from me, and I can give that to any other broker like True North or Holmes Murphy, and they can work off of the same numbers. The difference would be compensation if they would set up their compensation differently, but the numbers that they're going to get from Wellmark or any other health carrier are going to be the same.
Is there anything else to discuss? At this time, do you want to entertain a motion to approve one of the options?
Just reiterate my recommendation to renew with the partially self-funded plan.
You would be looking at, Jacob, page 3, in essence, the second column.
It'd be page 3, both of those columns.
Both.
Employees would have the choice between the PPO and the HMO options.
Both of these.
So what's the percentage that the employee is going to have to pay on these?
The arrangement that has been in place long before I was an employee has been that the city pays 90% of the premium costs and the employee pays 10% of the premium costs. So at the bottom of that page, you have the 4 different categories for each plan, the single, employee plus spouse, employee plus children, and then family. They would pay 10% of those costs monthly, and the city would pay the other 90.
Is that common with all municipal city employers to pay that?
I would say it's relatively common. There are certainly some cities, probably larger cities, that can bargain better on their plans that may pay the full premium. But I think this type of cost share is pretty common. There may be some that have a higher employee share, like 15 or 20%, but I don't think usually people go higher than that.
So of the other cities or municipalities that you have looked into here, what percentage is still on the 90-10 split? 80% of them? 60% of the?
I did not specifically look this year at different cities, so I can't say. I think it's a fair split. So I don't have a real feel of where things are at in the region right now. But just historically, my experience has been that this is fairly common.
And just meeting with other people over the years, it's pretty common around different cities.
Beth, do you recall what your arrangement was in Boone, or
We didn't pay anything. The city paid the full.
city paid the full?
Yeah. Well, 3 of the cities did the same thing.
And
I
I've
think
seen
it's
it
very
where,
reasonable for the family. Their cost 10%.
but then I've seen it where a single, the city would pay for the single fully and not charge the single person 10%. But then the family, they would charge them 15. So, it works its way out.
Sure.
Yeah. In my experience, just to jump in with cities and really government municipalities, 90-10 is still rich compared to most of what I see, but specifically to your point on the families, I see a lot of employers, again, cities, government, counties, that contribute a very high percentage to the single, 90, 100%. But over the last 5 to 10 years, there's been less contributed towards the families.
That makes sense. That's where your higher risk
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so I suggest that we go with the 2020 PSF medical plan option presented.
Jacob's recommendation.
Jacob's recommendation, yes.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Kay, second by Galen, to move forward with the Jacob's recommendation on the 2020 PSF medical plan options as outlined on page 3 of what was submitted in our pack. Council, is there any more discussion regarding the motion? Rebecca, is there any additional public inquiry?
I do not see anything at this time.
Beth?
Smith,
Yes.
Mockart,
Yes.
Zumba,
Yes.
Stout,
Yes.
Capron,
Yes.
Crump,
Yes.
The was unanimous decision on accepting the 2020 PSF medical plan options. 8.2, discussion and possible action on telephone use and stipend policy and the proposed change of mobile phone vendor. Brian, thanks for your time and your presentation.
He may not be able to speak.
There we go.
Oh.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
We'll be in touch.
Do you want me to get started? There's kind of twofold. First, there's the policy. We'll discuss at a later meeting the entire personnel policies, but wanted to pull this section out just as it related to kind of the other topic of the mobile carrier. The language, kind of the first paragraph, is essentially the same. I think the only change was adding the word landline, and the last sentence about landline telephones for personal long distance calls is prohibited, just because the cell phones we provide, there's no long distance charge there. So if they want to make a long distance call on a city provided cell phone, there's no reason to not let them do that. Other than that, certain employees may be required to carry mobile phones, and I've defined those on the page after that. That's myself, department heads, police officers, utility staff, and the assistant street superintendent. The chain, currently, it's myself, some of the department heads, like water, wastewater, street, and historically the parks has had a phone, but I don't think they have a phone currently. The police officers. So we would be adding all the other utilities employees, adding the remaining department heads like Beth, library, even though they don't have emergency type situations, especially very often, but I think it's important that we be able to contact them. And to me, it makes sense that they're provided a phone, especially Rebecca was pointing out, and she can chime in if she wants, but there are times like currently where they're not in the library all the time, and having a number that residents can reach out to them while they're not in the office might be a benefit without giving out their personal number. So, and then the utility staff, again, they have enough call out situations and enough technology that they use in the field. It makes sense for them to have a phone, especially since these phones are going to be used as hotspots, providing cellular service. So they may have their phone use the cellular service to power a tablet that they're using to look at and locate utilities. It just makes sense that they all have one. Again, if it's a water main break or sewer backup in the middle of the night, I think they should have a phone that they can be contacted and not be expected to necessarily use their own. And same, I don't know that every street department employee needs one, but I think the assistant superintendent should have one, so that, because right now when Greg goes on vacation, he hands his phone off to the assistant, and then Greg, now we have to contact on his regular phone, which isn't a huge deal, but to me, I think it makes sense that he keep his phone on him to continue to be reached, and the assistant have his own.
Shouldn't there be a phone, an assistant in water and wastewater in case the department head is indisposed for whatever reason?
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's something that we will work on, but for the purposes of the policy, they're going to have a phone anyway. So, like, I agree with what you're saying. It's just not necessarily part of this policy right now.
Well, usually they have somebody on call for weekends that have to do rounds, so they could keep a rotating phone, when I'm.
But for 99 cents, if we go for the new one, everybody should have one.
Yeah.
So going back up to the policy, those people would be required to have one and be provided one, or at least the non-police department would have the option to use their own and be provided a stipend, but we'd have to make sure that it's able to do everything that we require it to do. If we're, providing cell service in the field, then theirs has to be able to do that as well. And those sorts of things. If we're requiring them to be able to check their email, then it has to check their email. But that $20, while there's no stipend provided now, and we are creating a stipend, it's a low amount. It's not intended to be very enticing, but to try to remain somewhat fair. If somebody's really, for some reason, against either carrying to or using the mobile for personal reasons, which is allowed under the policy, I don't see any reason not to allow them to use it as a personal phone if they feel comfortable doing so. That's what I do right now.
So then your personal calls are subject to scrutiny by anybody that wants?
They potentially could be. They don't automatically become a public record because public records aren't defined where they're stored. They're defined on what content they hold. If there was an inquiry and they, subpoenaed your phone, they could potentially be reviewed by those investigating that issue. But just on like a FOIA request, those would not be required to be turned over because the content is of a personal nature, not of a business related nature. Just like you can use a personal email account to conduct city business, though even if it's on a personal email, it is still public record.
Sure.
It doesn't make everything in your private email public record, just those emails that contain public public discussion,
Okay.
public content. So really, I think it only comes into play if there's some sort of special inquiry where the device is taken into custody, which hopefully never happens, but is at least pretty rare.
So what would the charge be, say, for your phone or department head's phone? What would the monthly fee be as opposed to the $20 stipend?
I don't know that every employee would need the hotspot feature, which allows them to use it almost like a mobile router they can attach devices to and get internet from. maybe not every employee needs that, but so the base charge for unlimited talk, text, and data, which is not throttled, and that is a big advantage. Most unlimited plans on the private market will throttle you at some level, or if you are going to get a non-throttle plan, it's much higher than what unlimited plans they advertise. So that plan is $39.99 per month. If you want to add the hotspot feature to that, it's an extra $5 per month. So that would make a total of $45 per month. And to give you, again, comparison, most of our plans right now, I think most are below that, but they're only getting 2 gigabytes of data. Mine is the exception. I have an unlimited plan through US Cellular, and mine is, I think, $55, I believe, a month. So it's $10 cheaper, and again, mine does have a throttle on it. So $10 cheaper for a better plan. And again, that's just the price is just one aspect that I'll go through, but hopefully that answers your question.
Yes. For that kind of a price increase, it's not that bad.
I think that covers the policy for the most part. Getting into, I would propose switching from US Cellular to FirstNet, which is a kind of government established and run program, although it's supported by AT&T network. We would not be purchasing from them. There's some sort of agreement between FirstNet and AT&T for use of the network, but we do not pay AT&T at any point in time. We pay FirstNet, and the primary benefit to the law enforcement, and that's why they don't have the option to opt out and use their personal, is that they have priority access to the network, especially during emergencies when there might be an increase in usage. People, calling loved ones to make sure they're okay, or looking up information about a storm or whatever it may be. There's an increase in usage. They would have dedicated space, dedicated data, so that they can continue to do their work without interference from the public. And I think that's a real advantage. The other thing, and I don't think this is going to be very common, but number 2 advantage, they've got deployable assets for, if there is a disaster or if we have a big event. I don't know if our local events are big enough, but like say Jones County Fair, for example, might be big enough where they could bring a temporary tower to increase the coverage for our service if the permanent network couldn't handle it. There is a new tower, I think, just south of Anamosa, that's part of this network. So, and I have talked with Sheriff Grover. They're in the process of making the switch to FirstNet as well. They haven't had any coverage issues except in a few of the more remote parts of the county, which our staff would rarely, if ever, visit. So from the coverage standpoint, I think it's expected to be just as good, at least locally. Again, it's supported by AT&T, which has a nationwide coverage, but I don't know specifics, if they were traveling, where there might be bad spots, but at least locally, it's expected to be good.
Jacob, did you say the sheriff's department is already using this FirstNet, or they're looking into getting it?
They're in the process of implementing it. I know at least some of them are using it, if not all of them. They're using both their phones and SIM cards in their laptops so that they don't have to necessarily hook their laptop up to the phone. That would be an additional cost for those SIM cards. I'm not proposing that. I don't see a reason why the officers can't connect their laptops to the mobile hotspot and use it that way, and then we've got one data charge. I don't think that would be too difficult. You should be able to do it at the beginning of your shift or at the beginning of your when you get in your car, and then it would stay connected while you're, in proximity to the device. So that's my plan. I haven't heard any concern with that.
And you've talked with Chief Hoyt?
We've discussed this with the department heads, and he didn't express a concern at that time. I don't know if he's connected now, but if he's got a concern, he's more than welcome to bring it forward.
He's online tonight.
Yeah, I'm here.
Do you see an issue with connecting the laptops to the phones versus having them have their own data?
I'm not sure how that would work. It might actually be the opposite way. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can now.
All right. I'm not sure exactly how it works. It might be the opposite way, where the computer or the laptops would actually be the mobile hotspot, because they currently run on those airtime cards, which give us that internet access wherever we go. I've talked with FirstNet representatives a couple of times, and I think that might be the case, but I'm not exactly sure.
Do they run through AT&T?
FirstNet, yes, is a subsidiary. That may not be the correct terminology. FirstNet is kind of a newer innovation, but they are running on AT&T on their network. However, they're also running their antennas and other networks on, other satellites and whatnot, or towers from like other providers. So Verizon, they will just put their own receivers onto Verizon towers and things like that. So it's kind of a conglomeration of different providers working together to get this FirstNet capability.
Chief Hoyt, could you clarify, were you describing what Jones County is doing or what you think would occur in our situation?
I'm just describing how FirstNet representatives have explained it to me. So we would have, our talks, of course, were preliminary, and they were at that point in time just for the Anamosa Police Department and how that would look for us. And so they were quoting us and giving us the options for running cell phones for each of the officers, and then 4 basically air cards for our mobile data terminals in each of our cars. And they were explaining to me that the mobile data terminals would act as the hotspots, as opposed to the phones acting as hotspots. So I was just, it may be the opposite of using the phones as hotspots. But again, that was just what they were explaining for the Anamosa Police Department and how they would work.
Okay.
Well, I've got a question about that. What's the security based off of using the phone as a hotspot or using a card in the laptop? Is there maybe more security built into the laptop with the card in the laptop than using the phone as a hotspot?
I can't really speak to the security of it, other than I know that the hotspots on your phone requires a passcode to use. So you'd have to be looking at the phone to, or know the password for that hotspot to sign on, just like any router. But beyond that, I just don't have the technical knowledge to say how secure it is.
Well, I was just kind of curious if maybe that card in the laptop had a built-in VPN tunnel, or maybe you got to turn it on the laptop to go through the hotspot. I'm just you know, that part of the security, I think, is something we need to make sure we understand for at least those police laptops.
I don't know if it's more or less than the cell phones, but you are correct. So I would have to double check with with Jones County on that. So we're kind of in a unique situation in that all of our laptops do run on the Jones County Communications Centers and or sheriff's network. And so we go through them for any security regarding those laptops, and they would be protected all the way up to whatever requirements are set forth by the state, so we can of course run our criminal information systems.
So we may want to do similar to what the sheriff's department's doing.
Yeah, I'll look.
And then that's essentially how it would look for our, at least for our mobile data terminals.
I'll look into into how the laptops should work. If they have to have a separate data either directly in the computer or in the car, we may not need the hotspot feature on the phone, but I guess that could be discussed too.
Okay.
In terms of control, I think that it is as a pretty good benefit as well. Right now, like I said, we're working with a private U.S. Cellular office, and we've gotten, I think, what you typically, you know, the customer service has been good, but again, for a lot of reasons, I think we should switch. One of those things is just the control over the plans. Once we have the device, we can, through their portal, deactivate or manage those plans on the phones, you know, at our fingertips through the portal, where instead we'd have to call into either the local office or the main U.S. Cellular line and work through all those changes that way, which is definitely going to take more time. And as well as the billing side of things, I think we'll have better access to that and seeing how the plans are used. I'm not, off the top of my head, I don't know what their other plan costs are, but I think they do have lower, you know, than unlimited. If we see, you know, that the vast majority of employees aren't using very much data, maybe we look at getting different plans, and that this feature would allow us to do that. And then finally, as we kind of discussed already, the price of the devices is a very large benefit because we're paying full retail cost on the new devices right now, hundreds of dollars for a new phone. Not that we've had very many recently, but we've got some that are working on older phones, 5 or 6 years old, that probably need replaced. And it just doesn't make sense for us to be paying those types of costs when we can pay 99 cents for a new device. So to add to that, I checked, some of our phones with US Cellular still have outstanding contracts, so we would have an amount that we have to pay out to terminate that contract. I don't have the exact dollar amount in front of me, but if we switched all our phones or opened up new lines for all of the employees I outlined above, we'd get a $200 credit per line that we open, and that would offset or exceed what we have to pay to US Cellular to close out those contracts.
Are we ready for public comment?
Let me see if there's any more discussion the council has. Is there any more questions for Jacob regarding this? You can go ahead and accept those inquiries, Rebecca.
All right, Jeff, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. Go ahead and give them your full name and address.
Jeff Swisher, 501 North Division. I am currently the IT technician for Jones County Sheriff's Office after my retirement, which I love. Chief Hoyt's information is protected right now. Always has been. Lisa, the IT technician that's in charge, and myself, we get notification if there's any breach in the system. I think FirstNet is an excellent way to go. That's why Chief Grover and I decided to do this about, right before I retired. I've been in meetings with Region 6 in Des Moines, and FirstNet's the way to go. It's also the way to go for city councilmen, mayor, city administrator, and all your department heads, because it gives you priority. If there ever was a tornado or an event like that in Anamosa, you would have priority over everybody else, which I think is important. City officials need to have contact with their department heads in an emergency. And when phones are all locked up, what that system does is shove everybody else out and let you guys talk first. So that's an excellent, I think that's an excellent way you're moving.
Thank you, Jeff. Does the council have any questions for Jeff?
So Jeff, do you have a preference on using the phone as a mobile hotspot for the police department or having the card in the PC, in the laptop?
So just to be honest with you, Rich, we're testing that right now at the sheriff's office, and we are having troubles with the SIM cards in the computer. For some reason, it throttles down the bandwidth, and we're working with NetMotion, which is our VPN tunnel. We're working with FirstNet, but right now the hotspot in the phone works the best for us. Now that's probably because technology hasn't caught up with itself, but it'll probably fix itself in time. But right now the hotspot works the best and it's the fastest.
Good. Okay.
Good to know.
That is good information.
Thanks, Jeff.
You bet. Thank you for your service, guys.
Rebecca, do you have other public inquiries?
Not at this time.
So are we looking to table this, or are we looking to separate out passing of a policy and then ongoing review of the switching the phones?
I don't think you necessarily have to pass the policy tonight, as long as you don't intend on making drastic changes to it, that would conflict with the FirstNet plans. But I guess I would be interested in a motion that would approve the switch and carrier over to FirstNet, and those employees, listed being required to have them. The policy, you could either adopt it separately, or you could just hold off and adopt it with the entire policy later.
Well, did any of the department heads have a problem with the policy?
Trying to remember. I can't think of any. Yeah, I can't think of any that were presented. Beth?
Well, I mean, realistically, they have the option of using their own phone or getting a phone that we provide. So, I mean, it's not that strict. So I'll make the motion to approve the policy and approve the change to FirstNet.
Second.
Was that second by John?
Yes.
Yes.
Thanks, John. Motion by Rich, Second by John to approve the policy as submitted and also switch phone providers from US Cellular to FirstNet. Are we comfortable enough at this time with FirstNet, even though Jeff has pointed out some issues to be worked through?
Well, his issues were, I thought, more with the laptops than the phones. And he said that the hotspots on the phones actually are working better than the cards in the laptops.
I'm comfortable moving forward. I'd probably look at trying to get things arranged to switch prior to June, maybe like end our contracts with US Cellular at the end of June and get things started with FirstNet, 1st of June.
The cost, if we go with it's at $45 per phone
If it has
per
the
individual.
if it has the hotspot feature, if not, it's $5 less.
40 or 45. Yes.
So how many phones are you looking at?
So that would be one for myself plus the department heads would make a total of 8. Officers would add, I think, another 7, so 15. The utility staff would add 5, 20, and 21, including the assistant street superintendent. And again, they would either be 40 or $45 a month, depending if they need the hotspot. I think I've got a sheet that kind of.
So you're looking at $800 or $900.
Yep.
Potentially, because if they decide to use their own phone, then it's only going to be $20, right?
Correct.
Or yeah, so not everybody may take advantage of this.
If we do allow them to use their own phones, as Jeff had pointed out, during those emergency situations, now are we able to have that contact with
That's why I excluded the police from that option. They have to have the FirstNet phones because they're going to be the major ones in those emergency situations. Not that the other employees don't have a role to play in emergencies, but I think the majority of their emergencies aren't the same types where you have the public hysteria.
Well,
typically.
what we may want to do is make sure the department heads all have it, but anybody in water and wastewater, as far as employees go, they don't necessarily maybe need to have the FirstNet phone.
That makes sense to me.
Well, like somebody was talking earlier, if the department heads had them, and if there's a rotation, I don't know how it works for who's on call. Like if the water or wastewater, if they do rounds, I mean, have your department heads have a phone, but could there be like a rotating phone that, if you're on call that weekend or that week, whatever, that person, if they're not the department head, would carry it, possibly.
Well, I'm trying to get away from rotating phones, but I want to make sure they all have one to be contacted. I guess it wouldn't bother me to totally eliminate the option to have your own, other than I think some employees would prefer that, and it does provide a little bit of cost savings that way, but it really wouldn't bother me personally if we just, had everyone have the FirstNet phones. It's probably worth the added expense. I included in there just based on feedback from some employees who preferred to have their own.
So on the listing that you provided yourself, department heads, officers, how far down into utility staff did you include for the 21 overall phones? All of them?
To have
So everybody within the water, everybody within the wastewater.
Those would all have, all either have phones or have access to their personal phone.
And you said we would be looking at purchasing 21 through those line items that you have listed there.
Yeah,
So everybody within the water and the wastewater, you are figuring a phone on the 21.
I think so. Am I missing someone?
Fire department included in this?
No. There's
Three,
three
four, seven.
water, wastewater, and 2 water employees. So that was, yeah, I counted 5 for the utilities, but so I think 21's the correct number. And again, I mean, they may or may not all have the FirstNet phones, but
And one of the reasons that they would need this phone is to be able to perform tasks in the field.
correct. So right now we pay separately from the phones. We pay for hotspot devices through US Cellular that they take with them, either hotspot devices or pay for mobile coverage on a tablet. So they've either got an iPad with data on the plan or a separate hotspot that they use just like they would use the phone, but it's only for the internet. So we're paying for those types of devices now. Those get eliminated because it's all on the phone.
So with the new system, how does the fire department communicate with the police department?
Radios, as they currently do. The police department or fire department,
Just has.
to my knowledge, has no city phones. They have city radios or department radios that they use, and that they can communicate with the radios that the police also have.
So it's almost a direct
Police have
connection.
phones and radios. Fire department just has radios.
So it's almost a direct connection. What
Yeah.
I understand that now.
Okay.
Just one more question, because I'm gonna just to make sure. What about if employee has one of these phones, decides to leave? Do we allow them to take the phone number, or are we going to keep the phone number?
I hadn't thought too much about it. I did have in the policy where they can keep the phone if we determine it's not worth much, and that's what I expect most cases to be. Usually a used phone, you just can't get much money for it. So if they want to keep the device, at least when the device gets old, I don't know if that's a situation where they're leaving, we would collect the device back. But in situations where we're upgrading to a new device, I don't see why they can't keep the old one that's no longer being serviced from FirstNet. That's just my opinion. In terms of leaving, we'd take back the device. I don't know about the number. I guess we could keep it if you thought it was important, but I don't think it's a huge deal, except maybe for department heads or people who have more established contacts.
Jeff has further comment. Are you ready for him now, or?
Yes.
Okay, Jeff, I've unmuted you.
Sheriff Grover, he opted to go with the hotspot on the phone, and I believe it's unlimited data, and it's different than US Cellular. Isn't that correct, Jacob?
Yes.
So what are you out by giving department heads that capability? When I was the chief deputy, I'd be careful giving that to employees that aren't in that department head role, because then you're saying they have to work when they're off duty. Now, that's something you got to be careful of. Just my opinion.
Thanks, Jeff.
You bet.
I guess my understanding is that having someone ready to respond does not qualify. So unless, I mean, once we call them and ask them to do something, then yes, they're on the clock for that emergency. But just by having the phone, I don't think that meets the legal requirement that we have to pay them for some sort of standby.
Might want to put that in the, directions then.
That is covered in a different part of the personnel policies, but I mean, guess I could add it in this section.
So we wouldn't get caught having to pay them for something that's, I can't see that happening, but it could probably.
Well, most of the department heads are on salary anyway.
Yeah, which means that they're 24/7.
Yeah.
Sounds like my job.
I think if we've got this spelled out in another area of the personnel policy,
Okay.
we would be covered.
Okay.
We have a motion by Rich, second by John, to accept the policy as was submitted and the switch over of the phone carriers. No additional comments. Beth?
Capron,
Yes.
Stout,
Yes.
Zumba,
Yes.
Lockhart,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Crump.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously. 8.3, first reading of ordinance amending Chapter 92 of ordinances of the City of Anamosa, Iowa concerning water billing.
The ordinance in the packet was drafted by the city attorney, and I reviewed it with them before submitting it in the packet. Language that was removed, I believe, is crossed out, and new language is underlined. That first section, 92.02, essentially gives us a little bit more clarity regarding changes of property ownership or changes in tenants, so that first of all, when the property switches hands, just in an ownership sense, even if they're not an activated account, it provides us authority to list the right legal owner on the account, even if, we're not going to be billing them because they have to request that, service before they be billed. But just so that our records are correct, we want to make sure that we're able to change the ownership of the account to the proper legal owner of the property. And then in tenant situations, it clarifies that once we're notified of somebody's departure, we get to notify the landlord immediately, and then essentially we then have access within 48 hours to turn off the service unless they inform us to transfer the account either into their name or the name of a new tenant. And that way we make sure that there's no issues where somebody's being billed who has moved out, because that's kind of where we're stuck at right now. And this way it'll either get shut off or put into the name of the landlord or the new tenant. Any questions on that first part? Going into the 92.05 refers more to how the billing process works. As discussed, right now, bills are due 20 days from their origination. That would be changed to 30. And then there would be a 5% fee, delinquency fee after on the 31st day after billing. So that's the first day that you'd be delinquent, or 31 days from receipt of the bill. At the 46th day, there would be an additional 10% for a total of 15% delinquency fee, as well as we would mail out a reminder notice that the person is delinquent. On the 61st day, if the bill is still not paid, we would move on to the door posting phase of the collection process. And one element that I kind of added since we last discussed this was, to me, it doesn't make sense to try to collect on a bill if it's under a certain amount that's owed. And this adds a little bit more flexibility to the process. So maybe somebody has some money, but not the full amount of the bill. Essentially, if they can pay their bill down to $25 or less by the 60th day, then we would not proceed with the door posting, and that balance would be added to their next bill. And that's so they wouldn't be fully paid off, but they'd have, unless their bill, I guess I don't think any of our bills, even our base rates, would get you above that. So they'd have to pay some portion of the bill to get down to that limit. But it's basically saying it's not worth chasing after that amount of money. And eventually they'll get caught up. If they really can't pay, then the next billing cycle, they'll get shut off if they can't pay it. If the bill is above the $25 on the 61st day, we door post, and then within 24 hours, we're shutting it off. And that's pretty much the gist of it. It expands what was a 30-day process out into 60 days. It has a little bit more penalties, but I would hope is more flexible for our customers, and also reduces the likelihood that we're spending time door posting and turning people off, which, again, our employees have other productive stuff to do, and that does not put us in a strong light with our customers if we can avoid it.
Not to interrupt, but I was thinking that we were extending that the shut off after door posting to 48 or 72 hours. Because the example was the doorpost gets put on the front door, people use their back door coming in and out and may not see it that first day.
I guess I'd be comfortable bumping it up to 48. I don't really want to go much more than that. And I also think, I don't think it needs to be in the ordinance, but my personal opinion is we need to go back to the neon colored signs. I know people don't like, other people being able to see that they're posted, but it's more important that they know they're posted. So that's just my opinion.
Honestly, I don't think it's that big a deal. I mean, when people have their building permits, I know for certain structures they got to have them posted in the front window on there, like a bright green color. So it's
I do like the 48 hours better, though.
We can make that change. 48 hours.
And is it always $25 for a posting?
Yes.
Okay, so if somebody pays the bill, but then they don't pay for the posting, they're not going to get shut off?
If they pay the bill by the 60th day, they won't be posted and they won't be charged. Once they're posted, they then owe the bill plus the posting.
Right, but what I'm saying is if they pay the bill and in the meantime they got posted, and so they've got that extra $25 sitting out there, but they paid the late fees and everything as of that day, they're not going to get shut off for not paying the $25.
So we review the list of people who are going to be door posted before we send them out to do that. So that's based on, end of, they review what payments we have received throughout the night prior to the 61st day. So on the 61st day, we'd review all the accounts, see who's still delinquent, and those are the ones that get posted. So we should have caught everyone who paid overnight.
Well, but what happens if they're out doing postings and that person walked in and made their payment?
That person would still be late because, again, that would be on the 61st day.
Right, they'd be late, but they're going to get charged the $25 for the door posting, even though they made that payment. As
the policy reads right now, they would get the door posting fee as well.
Correct, but they're not going to be shut off because of not paying the $25.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Because right now, if they didn't pay the $25, they'd get shut off.
They wouldn't get shut off if they couldn't pay the door post.
Well, that's up there.
Okay. So I'm sorry. Maybe I didn't understand. You're saying if they paid the full bill on the 61st day minus the door posting, they wouldn't.
Right.
You're asking that they wouldn't be shut off?
Correct.
Well, it says right up here that you're going to be down to the $25, and you're not going to post or shut them off for that $25.
Well, I'm just trying to.
I'm comfortable not shutting them off as long as we're comfortable catching it in our system. Do you think
the system's going to have trouble with most of this?
Most of this.
So.
Well,
yeah.
This system's going to have trouble.
Right.
There's another, from what I saw.
Another issue, right?
Right.
Right.
Our current system will have issues with the second late fee. So the second late fee will have to manually go in before we send the second reminder. We're sending 2 reminders.
One reminder notice?
Oh, just on the 40.
Just on the 46th day.
Okay, because I thought it said something about by mail.
Yeah, there's language just stating that people are going to receive notice before they're shut off, but there won't be a reminder notice on the 31st day.
Okay, so we can do the 5% at the 31 days. That's not a problem. But when it changes a percent, we have to manually change the percent and then recalculate. And I think we have to print reminders with each time we do a penalty. I'm checking on that. I talked to Bonnie today about it. So she said that's going to be the only issue. We have to manually go in and change the percentage amount for the second fee. And she just said it does, leave some human error because we have to remember to change it back for when we go on the next month. And since the months are going to overlap, it's going to get a little tricky because the 61st day and the 31st day are going to be 1 month and the second month.
Is there a way to simplify that? To solve that?
The way we have it.
I'm asking you, Beth. Get your magic wand out.
I don't have my magic wand tonight.
Well, this is all the more reason we need to expedite that.
Yeah.
Getting a new accounting system.
I agree.
I find it confusing, and we're asking for trouble when we gotta go in and override a system and manually override it.
That's why I'm asking if there's a way we could correct that.
I don't know why I'd rather take a test than figure this out.
So what if instead of the 31 day 5%, you just do the fee at the 46th day? Instead of doing 2 fees, I think
nice, but Just to answer the question, obviously it provides less penalty for people who are only a little bit late versus a lot late. But I
Right.
understand in our current situation, I wouldn't have a problem doing what you
Yeah,
suggested.
just do one.
Just do one penalty at the 46th.
Would that fix it?
That would be
fix it.
much better.
Yeah.
Bingo.
Much
I'm all
better.
for it.
How far off are we of changing accounting systems?
I'm waiting for some numbers from one other one. Other than that, as we've talked, there's one leader right now. So that's it.
Okay. Well,
More
because
to come.
if this is a very possible thing with the new accounting system, this would work from what I've seen.
I
but-
believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, but as of this very moment, it will not.
Not
Unless
without
we
us doing it
tweak it.
manually. Yeah.
Right. So is this something that we need to put in place right now? Or do we say June or July 1st, it gets put into place? And maybe by that time, we actually have something that we can work with.
And it depends on when we're gonna start charging penalties, because right now we're not doing any
Right.
of that anyway.
You're not charging any penalties at all?
Under the current situation.
Just due to COVID-19, we're not doing any
Oh, wow.
penalties or
Yeah.
shutoffs.
Yeah,
Right.
I understand that. But
Yeah.
I meant the previous ordinance had penalties in it.
Yes, correct.
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 Yeah.
When it comes to processes, it's so much better to be system driven. Allow the system to work it for you instead of being employee driven. And that's what manual override is. I'm not questioning the skill set, but we're setting ourselves up for failure.
Well, I agree.
And we already have enough complaints periodically with water bills, and now we're going to add to it.
I agree. I would want the ordinance to work with our system to avoid any manual changes. So I'm comfortable making the change that Beth suggested, even if it's temporary, and then we can revisit how those penalties work if we have a new system in place. That's fine with me.
Magic wand did work.
It's all good.
Is that the only issue you see?
That was it. Yeah.
Okay.
That was it.
Problem solved.
Well, let me ask, is this something that we need to do tonight? Because under the current situation, there are no penalties. So why bring this into play right now?
I don't necessarily see it as urgent, but I definitely wanted to get it in front of all your eyes. It was definitely something I think that was requested. So
Table it till
Yeah,
we get the system up and running.
We had talked about this, but I think in the current situation, we can put this on the table and then let's see what our new accounting system will do. That, maybe this needs to be tweaked a little bit, maybe not, to conform to what that system will do. And we need to address it at that point in time. But I think this is a great thing to have to start with, because we do have a little tweaking to do with it already.
And that we could hopefully expedite our new software and then take care of this all at one time.
Yep.
So we need to table it.
Well, I'm gonna figure Rich just made the motion.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Everybody's heck.
Motion by Rich, second by Kay, to table 8.3 for future discussion. Is there any other council discussion? Is there any public comment?
I'm not seeing anything at this time.
Beth?
Crum,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Zumba,
Yes.
Stout,
Yes.
Lockhart,
Yes.
Capron,
Yes.
Motion to table was unanimous. 8.4, scheduling the elected official training.
I sent out some correspondence, possibly doing 2 90-minute sessions with the council on May 13th and 14th. As of right now, I don't think I've received any conflicts with those dates. Those would start at 6 o'clock, like our normal meeting time, and that's a Wednesday and Thursday, following a council meeting on the preceding Monday. I guess I would just like to confirm those dates so that the city attorney can prepare unless there are conflicts.
No.
Do we need a motion to?
You said that is the same week as a council meeting?
That is.
Is there any way we could put it on an alternate week so we're not so heavy on meetings? Just throwing it out there.
I guess I wouldn't have a problem. I would have to confirm any new dates with the city attorney, but assuming he's available, I wouldn't have a problem moving it to an off week.
Well, I'll tell you, I think the further we can push it back, the better it's going to be right now. So if we could go to May 20th and 21st or something to that nature, I think it would be better.
Is that, I guess I can take that as a motion to set those dates, but as long as it's contingent on the city attorney's schedule.
So May 20th and 21st, is that what you're saying?
Well, that's a week off and it'd be an off week for us, so.
May as
And
well
you
not
said
have,
or we could even do Tuesday, Thursday of that week.
Well, we need to find out if the city attorney, what days he wants. Just have to
Correct.
email.
Yeah, I guess, since we've got everybody here, I mean, if you prefer that following week, the week of the 18th, would all the council members be available 19th, 20th, and 21st? All 3 days. It wouldn't be a 3-day training, but just in case he's only available 2 of the 3.
As
Would all
far as
3
I
days
know,
work
right
for
now,
everyone
I
here?
have nothing that week.
Flexible.
Yeah, so
Okay.
am I.
Make it work.
Should
All right,
try
I'll try to
to.
reschedule for that week and let you know when I've got them finalized with the attorney.
Okay.
We don't need any motion on that, do we?
No.
8.5, resolution setting the date for the public hearing for amending the current city budget for fiscal year 2019-2020.
I move to
I'll
set.
make a motion. What's
Go
that?
ahead.
Oh, I'll make a motion to set the date of May 26, 2020, and at the time of 6 p.m. for a public hearing on amending the fiscal year 2019-2020 budget.
I'll second.
Motion by Rich to set the public hearing for May 26th. Motion was second by Kay. Further council discussion? Public comment?
I do not see anything at this time.
Zumba,
Yes.
Lockhart,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Crump,
Yes.
Capron,
Yes.
Stout,
yes.
Motion setting the public hearing carried unanimously. 8.6, review and approve current bills.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve the bills by Rich, second by John. Any further discussions from the council?
I do have one question. I see we're paying Phil Staub again. Is he done?
I believe that's the last of his work. We are on the new server. All the City Hall computers are updated to Windows 10. I think this billing includes some work he's doing on our switch. But if not, that would be the last of it there. I am still working on, and hopefully will expedite getting a new IT provider in place.
Yeah,
Please,
I
as
would.
soon as possible.
There's a lot of good professional vendors out there to look into. I think it'd be worth doing
Well,
that.
and plus, those vendors are going to have multiple people, so we're not going to be relying on one individual who may or may not get to us in a timely fashion.
Mm-hmm.
So
I would
the
like
sooner
to
we
see us
can-
look for a contract that has specific times when the person's gonna come and update and do things that need to be done rather than
As
having to
needed.
call and if
Well,
that's
I,
possible.
some of these guys that we could contract with, they can monitor the network remotely. They can step
sure.
in and solve a majority of the issues without setting foot on site. But
Mm-hmm.
I want somebody who's reliable.
Mhm. Yep.
Any further? Beth?
Smith,
Yes.
Lockhart,
Yes.
Crump,
Yes.
Zumba,
Yes.
Stout,
Yes.
Capron,
Yes.
Motion to pay the bills carried unanimously. 9.0, City Administrator's Report.
I know we'd previously discussed about the fiber optic vaults. I'm still working on correspondence to get out to Olin Telephone Company, and we'll keep you updated on how that goes to get those at least prepared and flush with the.
We haven't made contact with
We
them
have
yet.
not.
We need to get that done this week.
Sure.
I would like to just to suggest that we wait 1 week. Like I said, these coffins they've got out there look worse this year than they did last year. There's dirt washing away. They didn't seed things. The dirt around mine has sunk more. I've got larger areas where the kid could step in them and get hurt. I plan on taking some pictures. I'm not going to have time this week, but the weekend I'm going to, and I'll get them back. So probably next week we can have pictures. We get our city attorney also, in case we need to throw a grenade over the fence.
We can certainly
Like,
reach out.
I'll
to-
work on the correspondence
Yes,
and make sure it's
contact.
prepared. If you want
Do
to.
you want me to take more pictures or no? You've got some now, I think, that I gave you, if I remember right.
I'm sure I've got them if you send them, but I just want to make sure any photos we provide are of the correct vaults, as there might be more than one out there.
Oh, there's more than mine.
I just meant different projects that
Yeah.
are related.
I'd like to. Sorry, I was just gonna say I'd like to add. Since our last meeting, Alliant Energy, their contractor, they did work out in the Meadow Ridge area where I live, and they've done a very, very nice job. They make Owen look pretty poor. They had they came through, fixed it up pretty good. They had landscaping crews come and put everything back. I mean the coffins are square. There's there's dirt all around them. They make Olin's look pretty bad. But I've noticed, we go walking every night, and there's both big and small coffins. But all the ones Olin's done, there's, whether they're big or small, there's areas where you could get your foot down in there, where you can see there's big area down there. So.
Well, Jeff, if you're going out walking, maybe while you're walking, snap some photos.
I can do that. I can tell you where pretty much everyone's located because I walk by them every night.
Yeah. Well,
at least
since if Al's going to be busy for the week, maybe while you're walking, you can get them snapped, get them to Jacob. He can disperse them to all of us then, and send them to the city attorney. Kind of speed up the process.
Yeah, I can do that. I mean, I'll try and make note of which ones where they're at. But
yeah, Jeff, I don't think you got to get a picture of everyone that's bad, but just so we show a representation of what the condition is.
I know when you walk by Alan's place, because I've driven by there a couple of times, and those are bad, and it wouldn't take much to get those fixed, but they are bad.
Yeah. But if you want to see some new ones, I could show you a comparison of picture, but I will say the crew that Alliant Energy had come through did a much better job. They promptly pulled the flags. I know Alan said Alan left the flags in all summer, it seemed like, but these guys, as soon as they were done the same day, the finishers, the landscapers, whatever you want to call them, they were there, fixed it up, and pulled the flags. So. Hats off to them.
So again, I'd like you to make contact with Olin, Frank, down Olin Telephone Company, and if he can come up here this week, he should come up. And we would really only need to show him 2, because he'd have a very good representation of the entire project.
Stop at my shop down there. I'll take you 2 of them within a block.
Let's put this into motion. I would expect that to occur this week.
Okay.
And you know what? I would really like to be there with you when you and Frank review these issues.
Bring them to my shop. I can take you to 2 of them within a block of my shop.
So,
3 of them within a block of my shop.
If you even by foot, you can see every one of them in about 20-25 minutes. So it doesn't take a long time to see them all on foot.
I'll work on written correspondence, but I guess I'll try to arrange an in-person visit.
That would be the simplest.
Yeah, that would be.
Okay. The only other item I had was regarding COVID-19. There was an announcement by the governor today that on May 1st, 77 of the 99 counties can have certain businesses reopen to some extent. I don't know all the details. I'm not going to try to go over them tonight. We are technically one of the 77 that could see some of those reopenings, but given our proximity to the other counties, in discussion with the department heads, we plan to keep our facilities closed to the public at least through May 15th, and then we'll reevaluate from there. But that's all I've got right now.
Can you give us an update on the Simonson claim?
The EMC insurance determined that the tree was on private property, not on city property, and therefore denied the claim.
So our insurance company denied
Yes.
the overall claim.
Yes.
Any questions? Any other questions for Jacob? .0 Mayor and Council's report. 10.1 Mayor's report. I do not have anything at this time. 10.2, council's report.
The library board met on, I don't know, last week or the week before. I went, but it was pretty usual meeting. Nothing outstanding to report.
Quiet on the home front.
Everything's pretty much shut down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no other council reports. 11.0, public with business with the council on items not on the agenda.
I will give people a minute or so to raise their hand if they would like to speak. Although I will say at this time, I don't see anything. Nothing is popping up. So.
12.0, adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Motion by Kay, second by,
I'll second.
that was Rich. All those in favor?
Aye.
What? No roll vote?
Adjourned.